So, I knew this day would come. A game which is both my personal favourite and one of the most controversial of recent times is now in the PlayStation Store sale for under £9, so I have to review it. So here we go. I'm going to review The Last of Us Part 2. Now I'm going to break this review into 3 parts, and already I can see that this video will have a very different tone to my usual content. So in these 3 parts I'll look at the game, the story, and the controversy. I'm going to keep this spoiler free with one exception, which I'll just come out with and say straight away, because everyone knows this. Everyone knows Joel dies. That was never really a secret. But the rest of the game's secrets are yours to discover. Before we start, please do drop a like, hit subscribe and dive into the comments. I'd really love to hear what you all have to say about the game and my review. So let's start with gameplay. And straight away, as soon as this loads up, you know it's a Naughty Dog game. You can see the Uncharted influences everywhere. There are even a few Easter eggs in there. But it definitely has the most refined version of the Naughty Dog engine that I've ever seen. Movement is fluid and realistic, and it keeps you fully engaged. You really do feel like you're guiding Ellie through the levels, over the car, into the grass. It all starts with the best tutorial I've ever seen. I mean, using a snowball fight to learn combat controls. Details like this are littered throughout this game. I've completed this game a good few times on different difficulty settings, and I'm still finding new stuff. You'll build a good selection of weapons through your game. Each will have a very different use and effect on the poor souls you use them on. All weapons can be upgraded at workbenches. You'll find these littered throughout the game. But these upgrade animations though, just look at the detail. When you use your weapons, the deaths are graphic and they're not always quick. It's a world away from killing NPCs by the dozen COD style. You have to listen to your enemies choke on their own blood, or die screaming if you've taken their leg with a shotgun. And it's no different with the infected. Whilst you will learn to hone your headshots, and believe me, you're gonna want to work on your headshots, there are still lots of gruesome ways to dispatch these sometimes disgusting enemies. Working through the game, the first thing you need to adapt to is how little you have to work with. Ammunition is rare and crafting materials very sparse. So much so that you won't actually be able to fully upgrade your weapons or skills tree on one single playthrough. So you need to choose your upgrades wisely, choosing the ones that work for your playstyle. This can mean skipping a workbench or two until you've saved up for an upgrade that works for you. In some ways, the order of play reminds me of Metal Gear Solid 5. You aim to get as far through each scenario as you can on stealth, knowing that you will have to go loud at some point, and the difference being that you probably won't have enough ammunition to do the whole scenario without some stealth. AI is pretty good. Enemies will communicate with each other and flank you. Their visibility is good, and when dogs are introduced it gets even more difficult to stay in stealth. It's not super smart, so whilst patrol routes do vary more than most, they're not just traipsing along the same goat path like most in-game enemies. But with patience, you can work out where to head and thin their numbers through stealth. Throughout the first part of the game, pacing is good. You're actually given a large level really early in the game, and this is quite close to open world by Naughty Dog standards. As you move through the days, the environments get tighter, more dilapidated, more gruesome. Ellie's mental state does the same. You have to watch a character you love unravel in front of you, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Far from it, you have to actually make her do it. When the writers made you press the button to torture Nora, you feel like Ellie has hit rock bottom, but she hasn't yet. She has a way to go. Once you're used to the controls, you can really start to experiment with the detail painstakingly added by Naughty Dog. There are so many intricacies in the combat, from stealing weapons, flying attacks, to luring clickers onto your enemies. I didn't really start to get the best out of these until I'd finished my first playthrough. The graphics themselves are stunning throughout. The depth in the landscapes is breathtaking, and the detail, from how ropes behave right up to the way a frozen lake responds when a horse walks through it. The gameplay itself stands up to multiple playthroughs, and there's a difficulty level for everyone. And they will give you a good challenge, but don't be tempted to try Survivor or Grounded difficulty on your first attempt. These levels are just brutal, and resources are even more difficult to come by. I will include a link to to some of the best gameplay I've seen in this game, which clearly isn't by me. But you have to promise to finish my video first. You promise? Okay, I believe you. You'll find Gamer ANH in the description, and boy are they going to be a handful when the new factions comes out. The second key part of the game, and the source of the main controversy, is the story. Now I'm going to word this carefully to avoid spoilers, but I'd encourage you to watch this video again after you've completed the game to see if you agree. The story is told through a series of cutscenes, optional content, flashbacks and in-game dialogue, so there isn't a predictable do a level, watch a cutscene, do a level, watch another cutscene approach. It's much more fluid than that. I also love how having a gay female lead doesn't get a huge amount of attention in the plot. This relationship at the centre of the first part of the game isn't treated any differently to any other relationship I've seen depicted, and that just goes to show the quality of the writing. The story focuses on Ellie's battle with rage and her need to avenge the death of her adopted father figure, Joel. That they had become estranged makes Ellie's loss more raw and her rage more bitter. Ellie's revenge story arc is mirrored in other parts of the game, with a similar story following another character's recovery from revenge. So as you play through, you get to see the futility of revenge, whilst being forced to push Ellie further on in her doomed and bloody journey. It's utterly gripping. I can honestly say the story in this game moved me in ways that no other film or game ever has, and maybe never will again. So why the controversy? Well, yes, they did kill Joel, and they did kill him early, and he didn't die well. But that's such a key element to the story. Ellie loses herself in rage and has an insatiable lust for revenge that she just can't satisfy. You get to know the characters by name before you kill them. There are no NPCs in The Last of Us Part 2. Every enemy has a name, a story, and friends that will miss them, and dogs that will miss them when they find that they've been brutally murdered by you. You're even confronted with the consequences of your actions later in the game, but none of this is enough for Ellie. Nothing other than the brutal killing of those responsible for Joel's death will do. It's not pleasant to watch. It's one of the grittiest, darkest and most brutal stories I've ever seen, and it was no surprise at all when I heard that HBO wanted to make a series out of it, and I cannot wait for that. Many people have criticised the story's back and forth nature, and yeah, I would agree, it doesn't have a neat story arc like most. You know, build to a crescendo, have a climax moment, and then fade down to the end. This story builds up to 4 separate crescendos and drops down to different levels between each one. You could say it's messy, but Ellie lives in a messy world, and revenge is a messy business. I think the story feels true and right for the world it's set in. Finally, there is some controversy around the middle section of the game. Now, without spoiling it for you, what Naughty Dog do here is ask you not to judge someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes. And whilst yes, some of the things they have you do for this bit are a little bit cringe, you do really get to see the growth of a character. And if you don't see that growth, or if it doesn't resonate with you, I get it, I really do. Naughty Dog asks you to try to understand someone you hate. Someone you've just spent 10 to 20 hours of your life trying to kill, and now you're expected to understand her point of view? To help her even? No thanks, I'll just kill her and move on to The Last of Us Part 3, thank you very much. But it is worth it. Through the occasional bit of cheese, you get to see what revenge does, and the regret it spawns, and how it's ultimately futile. You get to see everything you want to warn Ellie about, but can't. At the core, this is basically a love story. It's full of people doing what they think they have to for the ones they love, whilst also forgetting about the others who love them. What Naughty Dog did with this game was brave. They knew what people wanted. People wanted an older Joel with bigger guns, bigger enemies, and more explosions. What Naughty Dog gave us was a game that is a million miles away from this, but that I believe sits perfectly in the brutal, corrupt and messed up world that they created. Along with many other things, Henry Ford was credited with saying, if I'd have asked people what they wanted, they would have just said, faster horses. Naughty Dog took this approach and ran with it. The game they delivered was not the one anyone wanted or asked for, but it's undoubtedly the right one for the series, and in my humble opinion, the best game created to date. It combines the very best graphics of the time with perfectly crafted gameplay, an obsessive attention to detail, and simply the best story ever created for a game. This game is a worthy successor to The Last of Us, and I can't wait for The Last of Us Part 3. So if anything is worth £9 of your money, then this is it. Now I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I might not agree with you, but I will respect your opinion. You can pick The Last of Us Part 2 up now in the PlayStation Store for just under £9. Thank you so much for watching this, and I'll see you next time.